Hello and welcome to the history of Stargate Universe. Today's episode will be covering Colonel Everett Young, and here we go. Everett Young is a colonel in the United States Air Force and was commander of the Icarus Base when it was attacked. He is currently the leader of the Destiny expedition. Young spent some time as an SG team leader. He is approximately 40 years old and has been married to Emily Young since 2007. According to Lieutenant General Jack O'Neill, he offered Young the position of commander of the Icarus expedition before he offered it to Colonel David Telford. But Young turned him down, opting instead to return to Earth. Young and his wife are estranged due to Young's always choosing military career over their marriage, and had an affair with Lieutenant Tamara Johannesson. 2009. Young was assigned as the commander of the Icarus Base. When the Lucian Alliance attacked the base, he helped to organize ground forces while Colonel David Telford led the F-302 Fighter Interceptor Squadron into battle. He was forced to evacuate the remaining 80-plus personnel from the base through the Stargate to the 9th Chevron address when Dr. Nicholas Rush dialed it instead of Earth, stranding the entire group on the ancient starship Destiny. Young was last to enter through the gate as he needed to locate the long-range communication device first. He entered through the gate as the base exploded, throwing him through the event horizon at high speed, seriously injured by the subsequent impact. He placed Lieutenant Matthew Scott in charge until he was able to recover. As the highest-ranking officer on the ship, Young became the leader of the unlikely expedition, once he had recovered enough to move around. When it appeared as if Destiny would collide with the star and be destroyed, Young organized a lottery to determine which 17 people would board their only operational ancient shuttle and escape to a nearby habitable planet. Despite suggestions that he should rig the lottery to ensure the best possible combination of candidates, he picked the lottery winners fairly. He took his name out of the lottery and did the same with Dr. Nicholas Rush at his request. Ultimately, the ship was not destroyed as it needed to pass through the star to refuel its reactors, and the shuttle was recovered. He went on a mission to Hoth to retrieve a new supply of water for the ship, joined by Lieutenant Matthew Scott. When Scott was trapped in a crevasse following a tremor, Young refused to abandon him. Fortune worked in his favor when a later tremor shifted the ground enough to free Scott. Young and Dr. Nicholas Rush would come into conflict over how best to handle their situation. Rush's reclusive nature and willingness to take risks did not sit well with Young, as he felt Rush was not willing to put himself at risk in doing so. When the Destiny interface chair was located and its purpose determined, Young forbade the use of it despite Rush's protests, knowing that a similar device had a universally fatal outcome for humans. Rush argued that the chair was the only means of gaining control of the ship, but Young was only willing to allow Rush himself to sit in the chair, knowing Rush would not do so. Rush would later gain access to the subsequent link with the seed ships, in which found evidence of a planet like Icarus Base that could get them home, which he hoped would convince Young to allow the use of the chair. Young remained steadfast in his refusal, and Rush's discovery was revealed to be a fraud not long after. A few days later, Sergeant Spencer was found killed in his quarters. The gun was found hidden in Young's room, so an informal trial was held. Unable to come up with a conclusive verdict, Young arranged to step down and have Camille Ray take command. During this time, Dr. Nicholas Rush convinced Ray to allow him to research the Destiny interface chair, and Dr. Jeremy Franklin took the opportunity to use it, rendering himself catatonic. Young, furious at the development, blamed Rush for manipulating Franklin into doing it. Eli later discovered that Spencer's death had been a suicide, so Young took command once more. What Eli didn't reveal, except to Young, was that Rush had framed Young for the supposed moiter. When confronted about this, Rush admitted to his misdeeds, bluntly stating that he needed Young to step aside because he wasn't fit for command. Young assaulted Rush and the two got into a short struggle, which Young dominated. Rush remained defiant despite the beating, so he left Rush behind on another planet with a crashed spaceship, claiming that a rock slide had killed Rush. Young's story did not sit well with the crew, who knew of the animosity between the two men and believed he might have left Dr. Nicholas Rush on purpose. Eli Wallace, having known about Rush's framing Young, ended up voicing that concern to Young himself in a moment of frustration. A few days later, Young's attempt to use a long-range communication device inadvertently caused him to inhabit the body of a Nakai. Not long after the connection was severed, the aliens came in a starship and attacked Destiny, kidnapping Chloe Armstrong. Young tried to use a communication device again to rescue her, but wound up finding Rush instead. He set Rush free, but his connection with the alien was broken. The aliens started their attack again, so Young ordered the ship destroyed. Rush managed to steal a fighter and returned to the ship along with Chloe during the attack. The two men covered for each other, hiding their personal feud for the good of the crew. Rush, however, had not been completely on the level. During a routine stop, Rush suggested that the aliens had visited Destiny previously and had left a tracking device on the hull. Young and Lieutenant Matthew Scott took a shuttle out to find the tracking device and destroy it, and Rush used the opportunity to stage a mutiny with Camille Ray. During the mutiny, the aliens once more attacked the ship. Young managed to circumvent the mutiny and retake control of the ship, learning that Rush's motive for staging it in the first place was to cover up for the fact of another transmitter having been surgically implanted in his chest. The device was removed and the ship escaped unharmed. Young would later extend an olive branch to Rush, knowing that their feud was harmful to the safety of the crew. Dr. Nicholas Rush would later approach Young in the belief that Colonel David Telford was a spy for the Lucian Alliance. Young allowed Rush to investigate by taking over Telford's body on Earth, making arrangements with Homeworld Command to have Rush followed covertly. Rush's suspicions were confirmed, but he was captured by the Alliance. Young interrogated Telford to no avail, as Telford had been brainwashed into serving the Alliance. Left with no other option, Young brought Telford to the brink of death and revived him to break the brainwashing. Himself again, Telford told Young of the impending Alliance invasion. Young prepared to defend against the incursion, but when it finally occurred, he hesitated since they brought Rush with them. This gave the Alliance the opportunity to gain a foothold and ultimately take control of the ship. The Alliance exiled Young and his crew to another planet after Vero argued against killing them. Vero himself would later be exiled by the power-mad Danik, but Young had little gratitude for what he considered the lesser of two evils. The efforts of Rush ultimately returned control of the ship into his hands. Young intended to do with the Alliance prisoners, as had been done to his own crew, but the International Oversight Advisory insisted that they keep a small selection of prisoners on the ship, Vero among them. After a botched mission to gather supplies from a world with an inactive Stargate, he put Sergeant Hunter Riley out of his misery, after he was fatally wounded in the crash. Not long after, he would lose Colonel David Telford as well, when he was stranded on a siege ship, which Destiny had docked with. When Destiny began running a battle simulation program that tested Young's ability to command by prompting him to dream about Destiny being attacked by the Nakai, and testing his reactions to the test, Young contemplated resigning from his command of the expedition as he felt as though he had lost the ability to make effective decisions. However, Lieutenant Matthew Scott inspired him to return to duty, telling Young that while he didn't feel capable of shouldering Young's burden himself, and Dr. Nicholas Rush wouldn't perceive the burdens of command at all, Young was able to make decisions and move on, while recognizing the scale of what he had done.